Texas Trade Talks with Paul Watson.
Welcome to Texas Trade Talks. I'm Paul, your host.
I'm Joe.
Today we've got a special guest. He's a Master Electrician, and he's also Division Chief
of Randall County Fire Department.
Right. So we're going to talk about a little bit about Jeff today. So Jeff, you do both. I'd like to, start out with a little bit about you and, some of the. Are you from Amarillo?
I am not. I'm from actually a town just north of Dallas called Louisville. That's where I was born. And I moved to Amarillo in 2006. So this will be my 20th year in September. I've been here. We moved here just to be closer to my wife's family. Her family's from here. She was originally born in Lubbock.
Panhandle-ish?
Yes. And but the good thing is we met down there in the Louisville area, and we got married and raised two boys down there, and then brought them up here with us. So yeah, that's be married 33 years this August.
Well, when he said no, at first I was a little concerned. He was going to say he was from somewhere like North Carolina or something. He's a Texan.
Texan through and through.
That counts. All right. So did you go to school down there? Is that where you were raised? Or
I did. I went through high school in Flower Mound. The high school is Edward S. Marcus. We called it Marcus High School. Now they call it Flower Mound Marcus. They want their name out there in front of it. Shortly after that, I went through the University of North Texas Police Academy.
Really?
And yes,
oh, wow.
Yes, I was a cop for 10 years.
So do you still have that license?
I do not. I surrendered that license back in 2004. Just because I went back into. Well, just depending on how far you want to go back in my history, I was a cop for 10 years, but when I was a cop, I was also an electrician. I started out as an electrician right out of high school, 1991, June 8th, 1991.
June 8th, that's my birthday.
I stepped out and become an electrician at 17, working for a company that my brother worked for. He got me the job. I had no idea what I was doing, but it stuck with me, and it was a good job. It was a great job. Stuck with it for 3-4 years. 1994, the housing market dropped, and we were not wiring houses. We needed a job, and so I went to work for the county sheriff, Denton County Sheriff there, Weldon Lucas, as a jailer. I was a corrections officer for him, till the housing market boomed back up. Started really loving the law enforcement side of it, and I spoke with the director of the police academy about possibly going to be a cop, and she said, "Well, what have you been doing?" I said, "Well, I'm an electrician." And she said, "Well, I need an electrician." I was like, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "We're building a new academy. Can you wire it for me?" I was like, so that's how I went through the police academy, is I wired the academy for my tuition to go through the police academy.
Oh, wow.
And so I graduated that, worked a couple more years at the sheriff's office, and then I transferred into the Office of Emergency Management, Fire Marshal's office, and I was an arson and bomb investigator for the rest of my career there. And that was from 1994 to 2004. I was an arson investigator for those guys. And then in 2004, it's, I don't know where y'all are in y'all spiritual walk, but God gave me a dream that I needed to move to here for Amarillo for some other.
Spoke to you.
Yeah. It was a reoccurring dream of something that was happening that I needed to be here for. And so I gave it up. I gave up my peace officer career, everything. I was still an electrician because, any type of government work that you're in, local government work or anything like that, it doesn't pay that great, or used to not. So I would wire houses on the side, things like that. I still worked for a Master Electrician down there. So when I came here, my intent was I was going to look for a law enforcement career here. But I knew I had my electrical license. I said, I can work for somebody. My brother-in-law, who is also an electrician here in the town, Cody Busby, that owns CB Electric, he was working for a company at the time. He set me down and wrote out a list of all these electricians in Amarillo, and I was amazed at the amount of electricians on that page. And he said, just here's a list of them. Just go see who's hiring, And he thought about it and says, you know what? Wait a minute. He circled Patrick. He said, you need to go by Patrick first. He said, I know they're looking for somebody. Okay. Walked in the door, and the guy that was running the shop then was the owner's son-in-law. Spoke with him, and he hired me on spot. And so I said, give me 2 weeks. I need to give a 2 weeks notice back home, and I'll be here. And I moved here Labor Day weekend of 2006.
Okay.
Nice.
So going on 20 years here in Amarillo. But along with that, we wanted to talk a little bit about the fire career as well. being fire marshal down there, I also worked as a volunteer for the town of Pilot Point Fire Department for several years. I was what they call a PRN firefighter for the city of Little Elm, which Little Elm now is huge. It wasn't that big when I was there. It was a tiny little speck on the map. But I was a PRN firefighter there, so I was part-time as requested. So when I moved here, my son was old enough, he wanted to volunteer, so he went to volunteer for Randall County. And it got to where when the pager, the tones would drop for a call, I would jump up. And I wasn't even in that line of work anymore. Oh, wow. And so I said, you know what, I had enough. I went and talked to Chief Amerson, who was the fire chief at Randall County at the time, and I become a member of Randall County in 2010. So this is my 16th year. Yeah. June will be 16 years with Randall County. Just started out as a volunteer for them, worked my way up as to captain, to district chief, and now I've been there so long, the younger crowds coming out of these academies know a whole lot more than I do. And, you know, I'm still old school ways of doing things, so I'm like, man, I don't need to be leading these guys when they know so much more than I do. Right. You know, it's changed so much, evolved so much over the years. And so I talked to the fire chief, and I said, hey, I think I'm going to go ahead and retire out and be done. Just leave, you know, just walk out. And, you know, I've had a good run at it, you know. Right, yeah. And he said, you know what? He said, I can't afford to lose you. And I was like, well, I said, I'm not good on operations. He said, no, I got a better job for you.
I got a better suit for you, yeah.
And he talked me into staying as their chaplain. And so I'm chaplain of the fire department. But to me, that wasn't giving enough back to the guys. Because when you sit down with somebody that's at chaplain, you know, I don't want a preacher man sitting there talking to me. I need a guy that knows what I'm doing. And so when I talked to the fire chief more and more about it, that blew up, and that's when I became the division chief. I'm division chief over firefighter wellness. And so
what does you know that mean?
Yeah. So you know, I look out after the guys, you know, critical incident stress debriefings after each major call. I lead those. I have a team, what we call a SISM team. And we branch out to all the panhandle, anybody who needs it, you know, because there's smaller departments, say, you know, Armstrong County, Claude, you know, that doesn't have that in place. And if they get a bad call, they're just expected to go back to work the next day and don't care. We got to give them a way to get that off of them. You know, when I was brought up through the fire service as a younger firefighter, it was like, if you talked about it, you're a wuss. Just choke it down, live with it. You know?
Man up, and move on.
And there's been too many guys that I personally know that has decided just to eat their gun.
Oh, that's terrible.
Absolutely.
That's terrible.
And so that gives me a fresh take on what I need to be doing in the fire service. Yeah, I can still go out and spray water if I want to. They give me free reign. I can still run the calls and things like that. Yeah. But my goal is, while I'm there on an incident with them, I'm checking on the brothers, seeing how they're doing,
making sure that their mental well-being,
absolutely. And so I'm still very active into the Randall County Fire Department. Here recently, you know, with the acquisition or trying to acquire the heating and air business as well, my time has been limited out there, and I feel like I've been neglecting them. So that's why this weekend is my weekend. I'm going to go to each of the fire stations and visit with a brother and just sit down with them. You don't have to preach to them. You don't have to, you know, dig into their life. Just say, hey, what's going on, dude? You know, how are you? You know, kind of thing. And so that really revived my drive in the fire department. So, yeah, I wear a lot of hats. Electrician. I become owner of Patrick. Like I say, I started in 2004 as an electrician for Bobby Patrick when he owned the company. 2010, we began discussion of me buying the company, and or 2009, 2010, I bought the company. So almost 16 years as well as the Master Electrician, owner of Patrick Electric. Recently, I've been offered a possibility of taking over the Patrick Heating and Air, which is a sister company. And so I am the acting manager of that company. So I'm running the electrical shop. I'm running the heating and air shop. I'm still doing my fire department deal. We were talking earlier before we started the show here about one of my things I do on the side as a hobby is make holsters, you know, Kydex holsters. You know, I always got my hand in something. Do I ever finish? Do I finish most of it? Probably not. But
I started it at least.
but I'm there. That's
So what they say, idle hands are the devil's playground.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself focused on the task is definitely a way to
Gotta keep pushing.
keep the idle hands at bay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what would you say? So you covered a lot of ground there. So
I'm sorry. I just
No,
took over and ran with it.
Great.
no, that's great.
That's
Your
excellent.
story's pretty. To be honest with you, your story. I never knew. I used to work there at Patrick, and
Yes,
now I own
yes.
the plumbing department, and so there are some things that I didn't know about you. So sitting down here and getting to hear some of your story.
All you ever have to do is ask. I'm an open book. I don't. I have nothing to hide.
Forgive me for what I'm fixing to say, but I never realized you were the popo.
It was a short-lived stint, and it was fun. But thank God I'm not a cop now.
Man,
I just couldn't do it now.
So Miss Mayfield, she's running for Potter County JP1, I do believe, and she was telling me a story about a child that was. I actually think I talked with you about this. The child was walking down the street. Her mother had told her brothers not to leave her alone. They all came home to eat. They were in young boys. They rushed off to get back to what they were doing, and so they left their little sister behind. And this crazy psychotic guy saw this little girl walking down the street, and to quote it's what he ended up doing to her. I'm not going to go into all the specifics, but some of the things that he said in his confession and some of the things that he did, I'm going to tell you right now, like I told, Miss Mayfield, I couldn't do that.
Right.
I just couldn't do that. And, a lot of our law enforcement officers have to deal with just bullshit,
Right.
I mean, when I was younger, I had that, that young, stupid, cocky, I know what I'm doing, the arrogance that comes with being 17, thinking you know the world. And, I got cocky with a cop one time, and he showed me real quick who was in charge. You know what I mean? And ever since then, especially, all the different things that have gone on politically, I'm not going to dive into that. But those men have a tough job.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
And when I was a cop, I remember the very first time I pinned that badge on, I was invincible.
Right.
And I did not trust anybody. Everybody was a thug if you're not wearing another badge like me, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I took that home. I treated my wife and my kids the same way. And yeah, that's something that I've regretted for a long time. And it took me getting out of that career before I realized it, and
That hindsight.
Thank God my wife put up with me and didn't run off. I gave her every opportunity to, because I was arrogant, I was cocky. Like I say, there was no trust. Anytime I needed to talk to my kids, I was interrogating them. I was not talking to them as a dad.
Yeah.
You were just wearing the cop hat all the time.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yeah, and that's the thing. Being a cop, you're a cop 24/7. You can't walk away from it, and I understand that. And that's one of the great things about doing what I do with Randall County now, is when they need the critical incident stress debriefings and things like that, the fire department hosts them. When we need it in the fire department, they host us. And so we're one big family out there now. There's no division between red and blue anymore.
Right.
Shouldn't be.
It's one big family, and it's great. The atmosphere with the Randall County, and we also work over into Potter County some with those guys, and they're just outstanding guys as well.
Yes.
But you just got to realize they're people too.
Yeah, they all.
But,
Yeah, and everybody makes mistakes. There is no such thing as a perfect human being. If there was, then I don't know. Maybe with the AI robots we're talking about, maybe Skynet might launch its version.
We all fall short. That's for sure.
Everyone's gonna fall.
Yeah, we all fall from grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what would you say your favorite? I want to kind of touch on both of them. Because you did electrical while you were doing the police, and you kind of had a mix of all of it, but you maintained one, which was the electrical.
Yes.
So obviously the electrical, it touched your heart some way. You
That's
liked
what I've
it
been
somehow.
doing the longest. And this is the crazy thing. We were talking earlier. My father was an auto mechanic. He owned his own shop, and He worked on anything and everything car related. He was just a genius when it come to cars. Yeah, you know, he didn't need the computer diagnostics that they do nowadays. He would have a long screwdriver,
Like, listen,
and he
guys,
would stick it to his ear just like a stethoscope, and could tell you, okay, this is what's wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
So
he
this
he
valve right here,
he had
this one
patience like none other. I mean, he could sit on his back with his hands over his head under a car, dirt falling in his eyes, and still thread that screw. And me, I would have done kicked the fender off the car, threw out every cuss word that I knew.
Right.
Wrenches would fly. I just couldn't do that. So my dad had 3 sons, me and my 2 brothers. I'm the youngest of 3 brothers. At one time, all 3 of us were electricians.
Really?
Yeah. 2 of us are still electricians. Myself and my next brother up, my middle brother, Jimmy, he is an electrician down in the Dallas area still. He's the one that taught me everything. He was my journeyman when I started for that company.
Oh, that's
that he worked
awesome.
for. They
That's
put us
cool.
together. You know, a lot of companies won't do that. They won't, you know.
They want a separation.
Absolutely. And but he taught me everything there was about wiring houses. He's a residential specialist. Been a journeyman for 30-something years, I guess. Still doing it every day. He's out there wrenching it every day. My oldest brother, he went to work in for a company called Waste Management, you know, a trash truck company, as a mechanic. And after a while of messing with those nasty, dirty trash trucks, he's like, "No, I'm done with this." And so his boss talked him into just going out and driving a route to kind of cool down a little bit. And he's been driving that route for that company for 40 years now. Oh, wow. And
He's just like that.
He's getting soon to retire. He's getting old enough to retire, but he loves hauling the roll off dumpster trucks. But any of the 3 of us could have walked right into that mechanic shop and took it over from my dad. Right. Here's a business, take it over and do it. But I don't think any of us had the patience or the drive for being an auto mechanic. And you know, we watched our dad. My dad was the greatest man on earth, in my opinion. He would give you the shirt off his back, and that's what hurt him as well, because that was his business. But if you didn't have the money to pay him, he would barter a way out with you. He would let you pay him out, or a lot of times he would just give that work away, because he knew that if you couldn't pay him and your car wasn't running, you weren't going to make money anywhere else at your job to pay anything.
Right.
And so he would I didn't know we were poor till we grew up, you know, and then I look back on it, man, we were poor. I had no idea, you know, because he provided so well, and it was a single income home that I grew up in. My mother didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom most of the time. She had a few little part-time jobs here and there just to kind of to bring in a little bit extra. But, just what my dad gave me that work ethic. And so when I stepped foot as an electrician in 91 for David Honig Electric down in Denton with my brother, the appreciation for tools and appreciation for looking at a job done, you know, when you're done, you should step back and look at it.
Right.
And like, I did that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the addiction. That's the addiction. Is an electrician being like some kind of fancy job or fancy title? No, I mean, it's junk work most of the time, you know, digging in attics, crawling in crawl spaces, things like that.
Oh man.
But when you're walking through a grocery store or going through Walmart with my wife, and she gets so mad at me for this, but I'm like, you see that right there? See that conduit right there?
I got the same problem.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
I ran that. You know, that flagpole light right there, I put that in. You know, 20 years later, I'm walking it's still there. Like, hey, yeah. So it's a signature of me all around this town that it's pride in your work. And like I say, and the appreciation for the tools and everything. Paul's looked in my office a few times. I look like I own a Klein Tools dealership.
He's got some pretty cool
because
tools,
the Klein Tools is where I cut my teeth. You know, my very first tool pouch, when I went to work for David Honig, they said, here's your first set of tools, you know, we're going to take $5 a week out of your paycheck or whatever, you know, to pay them back. Yeah. And he handed me those because when I first started, I was talking to my brother. He had a bunch of old extra tools that he was going to set me up with. And David, when we sat down and interviewed for that job, he goes, no. He said, a man needs his own tools. Yeah, sure. And he gave me that pouch. And so one of the things I have hanging on my wall in my office is that exact same pouch setup, still in the plastic from Klein. I found from the 90s, still sealed. And I was like, I need that. Found it on eBay. I bought it. But that's the exact pouch I started with. That's the exact set of linemen I started with, you know.
Had to have it.
And so, you know, I have this massive collection behind my desk of all these tools hanging up there, and it's just because that's where I cut my teeth. That's where it's fun, you know. The other tools of the trade, when I was a cop, I carried a Springfield 45 on my hip. I still have it. You know, that's, you know, that was a tool of the job.
Right.
Yeah, you know, my fire helmets, you know, all my retired fire helmets, I still have those. Those are hanging up in different places, you know, and things like that. But yeah, if I can go back to any job that I've ever done that meant something to me, I would have to say being an electrician is the one, just because you can go back and look at the things that you've done, and it still has your signature on it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
take a lot of pride in that. You know, there's been a few projects. I'm sure Joe does this as well, and we, you know, just like you said, you know, it's like, oh, I plumbed that house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that one right there. They you know, they were told they need $75,000 worth of work. We were able to get it done for $21,000, and we haven't heard back from them since. So you know, it's that sense of pride and what you do. Now,
absolutely,
being able to not only resolve the issue, right? Because it's one thing to resolve the issue, but give them a fix that actually lasts. Not coming in and slapping it together. And
yeah, you said you never heard from them since. That's a good thing.
it is.
That means you did it right.
Exactly. It's like, you know, I haven't heard from them in a while. Then it's like, you know, that's actually kind of the way we want it. We don't want to go out there and throw you a temporary fix on it, and then you call us back in 2 weeks and we have to come back out here and fix it. You know, that's one of the things that drives me nuts about drain calls. And you got some customers, they're like, well, we just want you to cable it. But that means we're going to be coming back out here. We would rather, because that's a
patch, not a repair.
It's a patch, and patches are just money down the drain. Money down the drain. Why don't we, you know, look at your pocketbook here, and instead of you spending that money, you know, 8 or 9 times in a year, let's just go ahead and fix it, and you don't have to hear from us again. Right. It's a one and done. Yeah. You're taken care of. So it's safe to say electrical is probably your favorite.
Absolutely. That's what I've been doing the longest. It's the career that's stayed a career the entire time.
Right.
Fair. Same for me. I've been a plumber more than I have anything. You know, I had that stint where I thought I could play security guard at the Ambassador Hotel. That lasted 3 months. You know, I was tired of plumbing. Plumbing.
Hey, I was a security guard once. This was years and years ago. Needed a job, and I went to work for Jostens. That makes the class rings and Super Bowl rings and things like that. So you know, we were guarding $14 million worth of gold. I thought, man, that's going to be so awesome. I'm going to guard that. No, boring. It was boring as can be. Hated that job. Absolutely hated that job.
I worked the night shift at the Ambassador Hotel, and I called myself a security officer because it sounds better. But you know what my technical job name was?
What?
I was the courtesy officer.
Yeah.
So I would drive around in the blue van, and I would patrol the parking lot, and really all that turned out for me, you know, especially here in Amarillo, Texas, it might be a little different in Dallas or something, but that just turned out for a chance for me to smoke a cigarette. All right, well, I'm gonna go out and get out of the building and go smoke a cigarette. Walking up and down all 10 floors, and you know, of course, by the time 5 o'clock came around, you know, up there on the top floor where all the luxury hotels, the luxury rooms were, you know, they had all the breakfast out. All right, cool, I get some bacon, I'll get a bit of sun. But you're right, it was terribly boring.
Yeah, it's a horrible job. It's a horrible job.
Terribly
now,
boring.
The funnest job I've ever had goes back to when I was a corrections officer, when I was a detention officer for the county jail in Denton.
Okay.
You know, because that was great. We got paid crap. We got $17,000. My salary was $17,660 a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. Minimum wage kind of.
Yeah,
But I loved it because they paid me to fight.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. We get some spicy inmates coming in, or spicy arrestees that come in, detainees. Oh yeah, it was fun.
It was one of those situations. All right, this isn't a verbal situation anymore. This is physical now.
Oh yeah. So
when you're young, you're like,
when you're walking cell to cell, giving them their trays through the bean holes and stuff like that to eat, and you know, you're like, oh my God, this is so boring. You know, walking around doing time checks, but man, when that radio lights up and they call you and say, hey, we got something going down up here, and you can just hear the thunder of all the detention officers' feet coming up that hallway. Oh,
Yes, excitement.
Somebody inevitably in the back going, get some. That was
that's hilarious.
That was great. That was a great job. Sucked pay wise, but man, I have an affinity for those that are in the corrections now. Those guys are awesome. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's a special breed.
well,
yeah,
you
for
gotta
sure.
you gotta have patience too.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
can only
Because
imagine what you
Oh, yeah, 'cause if-
just
if-
told, yeah, from the inmates,
If they can get under your skin,
off at you, yeah.
they're going to. And once they do it one time, they'll just keep
got you.
picking at it.
well, they
keep
know
picking at it.
you know, that backs back that backs back to the whole, you know, emotional control. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I was watching a video last night. His pastor was talking about emotions are are like a spirit getting into your body.
Yeah.
And when they get in, it takes over and takes over you because the emotions distract you from the faith that you're supposed to have, right?
Mhm.
They either make you arrogant and you get consumed by that, or they make you complacent and you get consumed by that and you lose sight, right? You know, he's it's the first time I've ever heard a preacher pretty much push stoicism. It's pretty much what he was doing. But he made a valid point in that because if you're not in control of your emotions, someone else is. So if you're working in a prison setting and you let that inmate know this is my button,
Yep.
you're absolutely right. They're going to push that
Absolutely.
button every single time.
Power at that point. yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You've taken the power over yourself, and you've said, "All right, here you go.
Yeah. Here's the key.
Here's the
Come
key.
on in.
Here's-
Yeah.
You want me to lose my job? Say this. I'll react this way,
You win.
and you've won. You've won the battle.
Absolutely.
So, what would you say your most interesting story is? And you've got so many careers.
Yeah, man,
You pick which one. Which one of your favorite stories throughout your careers, Bubba?
One of the funniest ones. We'll lighten up the mood a little
I like
bit.
that.
Have some
Yeah,
fun.
so-
Yeah.
Have some fun. One of the guys that used to work with us at Patrick's, he's moved on now to another company, but one of the guys that worked with us is actual Crystal's husband, Dan. We were working a job together. We were doing a meter stack change out at the Chasewood Apartments over there on 45th and Coulter.
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And we got the whole meter stack changed out. It had caught fire. We had changed it out. And we go to start, the inspector was there with us. And the inspector was kind of just watching us because he had to verify that the meter that we're putting back into the socket was the one that went to that apartment. So we're doing them one by one. Well, because it caught fire, there's a carbon trail on the back of the meter, and we didn't realize that. And Dan went to put that meter back in that hot meter socket, and it exploded. Just boom, arc
Ooh.
flash. Well, Dan is a Marine, and he's not only just a Marine, he is combat proven Marine. So he did what every combat proven Marine would do.
Right in.
He never phased him. It blew up, fire went everywhere, sparks flew everywhere. He never panicked, never moved. He just froze in that spot. Me, on the other hand, that was standing behind him, ran over the inspector. Ron Gibbs. Ron Gibbs was a little short, kind of squatty guy. I ran him over, like just plowed him to the ground.
Try to get
And,
away
and
from
he absolutely, somebody had to be free to call 911, But I swear, Ron had Nike marks on his face from where I just ran over. And so Dan and I used to get into some fun times like that. We went on the same thing and went to another meter socket call on some apartments over here. And one day we were both over there, and we could tell it was burning. You could smell it burning. You see smoke coming out of it. It's getting ready to melt down. He opens it up and he sees in there that, hey, this lug's loose. Maybe I can tighten it up and stop this. And so he looks over at me and says, hey, do you have a 1/2-inch nut driver? Well, of course, I was Mr. Electrician. I had this huge pouch on my side, had everything in it. I hand him that 1/2-inch nut driver, brand new Klein nut driver and everything. He looks in there and he reaches in, and it does the same thing. Sparks fly, smoke flies. He freezes again, does not move, pulls it back, and the whole end of the metal end of the nut driver is gone. He just hands me back a handle. And I was like, bro, you just burnt my tools.
That's in my tool, man.
But it just goes to show you, like me, I would have dropped it, ran, it would probably blew up and, been crazy. But Dan being, who he is, he just freezes and doesn't panic and like calm collectively hands me that handle, burnt smooth off back. I was like, bro,
You can have it back now.
That's admirable. That's a lot of control there. That's a lot of control.
And Dan, he was an excellent electrician. He's a master electrician as well. And we kind of talked jobs off of each other quite a bit. He's still a great friend of mine, and love the guy. And but yeah, we've had some fun times together.
Texas Trade Talks with Paul Lawson. Call Lawson's Plumbing today.